got a lamp. If you haven't watched the previous video, me and my partner have just moved back to Australia from New Zealand and we have no furniture. So we're going to build this studio together in this office and we're going to start with this lamp. We've got a key light this time and I've boomed the mic. So the audio, the lighting and that shouldn't change. I was using natural light last time. Anyway, the reason why I clicked on this video is if the Sony a6600 is a good video camera. And in my experience, I feel like it's a great video camera. I feel like the majority of users need this camera and they're not going to need full frame or more expensive cameras. The a6600 in 2020 is super relevant. It's still the most recent APS-C camera that Sony have released. It's still their flagship APS-C camera. So what actually makes a good video camera? Well, first and foremost, you need good autofocus. You need high resolutions at good frame rates. In-body stabilization or IBIS is very advantage. Having a good bitrate and dynamic range and color space. It's got to be usable, it's got to be a fair price, and also lens options. So the autofocus on the a6600 is great. It's one of the better autofocus systems in all the camera ranges, and it's one of Sony's best. I rarely use manual focus because the autofocus on the a6600 is so good. It has eye autofocus, face tracking, and also subject tracking. And another great feature about the Sony a6600 is that it has video racking focus settings, so you can change the time and the softness of when you rack focus from one subject to the next. In terms of 4K, like I said, it's oversampled from 6K. You get 30 frames per second and 24 frames per second at 4K. You get 60 frames and 120 frames per second at 1080p. Having 120 frames per second is a real treat. At 4K 30 frames per second, you do get a slight crop as well as 1080p at 120 frames per second, but it's very minimal. It's only 1.12, so you're not going to notice any crop. 60 frames per second is 2 times slow. It's great for that classic Peter McKinnon B-roll. 120 frames per second is 4 times slow. That is really great for speed ramps. 30 frames per second is something that I use a lot, and you get this dreamy kind of feel when you slow it down, and it's really great to get that at 4K. And I shoot everything at 24 frames per second, like the talking headshot, and that's the most cinematic feeling. I edit in a 4K timeline and I export everything in a 4K file. That's not going to change your 1080p footage to 4K, but it just enables you to upload something like a video file to YouTube as 4K and it'll be presented in 4K. 4K is also great for cropping in. If you're not really 100% with your composition, you can crop in and you can track. Also, another great thing about 4K is post software where you can stabilize your footage after you've shot it. It will crop in a little bit, but it will stabilize it. So you're not going to lose much resolution when you shoot in 4K doing that. That Sony a6600 has IBIS. It has an image stabilized sensor. It has 5-axis IBIS. For an example, here's a shot on the Sigma 56mm 1.4 with IBIS on and with IBIS off. Now that's around like 85mm, so that's a pretty long focal length and that's pretty hard to pull off like a stable shot. And as you can see with the IBIS on and then slowed down from 60p to slow motion, you get super buttery smooth. So in terms of bitrate, dynamic range and color space, you get 8-bit. You also get your standard picture profile, your HLGs, your cine tones, and your S-Log frees. Now, being an 8-bit camera, you can't really use S-Log free. I don't use it at all. I just find it gets washed out, oversaturated, and it just doesn't look good. My favorite picture profile to shoot on is HLG free, and I'll shoot that on BT 2020. I'll turn sharpness down to -7, and then I'll convert that to Rec 709 using a conversion LUT in Final Cut Pro. And that just gives you the best dynamic range and the most like color information you can get using BT 2020 and then converting it to Rec 709. So the sensor is an APS-C size sensor and it comes in at 24 megapixels. That's like the sweet spot for photo and video. Now, being a crop sensor, you are going to lose a little bit of information in lower light settings, but here's a great video from Manny Ortiz. Then he demonstrated like how well the Sony a6600 works in lower light setting. He used the 16mm 1.4, which we're filming on right now, and I think it's a great video to demonstrate on how well this camera does in low light. So check the link below. So the usability of the camera is great. I feel like it fits in my hand really well. One complaint I do have that's an easy fix is this pinky doesn't really fit. I actually attach a small rig L plate, and this just gives you a little bit more room at the bottom, but it also moves the cold shoe so you can vlog, so you can put the camera on the side with the screen tilted up, because it does have a tilting screen. It also allows you to have a Swiss plate on the bottom and also on the side for vertical and horizontal content. The camera has an audio jack, a small HDMI output so you can external record. It has a flip up screen, no record limit, which is a huge bonus, no overheating issues, which is another huge bonus. It's got a great battery life. You can get 3 hours and 18 minutes at 4K, 24 frames per second on one battery. That's a good amount of time. You've got all your custom buttons, and it's got a good laid out menu. Another thing that I do on the A6600 is I don't use the small little record button. I've just changed that to record with shutter. It's an easy setting. I'm going to go through a whole lot of video settings in a later video, so if you like this video and you want to see that video, make sure you subscribe. So let's talk about price. You can pick up an A6600 brand new for around $1350 USD or about $1400 depending if they're on sale or not. It is the most expensive APS-C camera you can buy. The A6400 is also a great option. That comes in around $900 USD, but the difference being is that you do get the smaller battery, you don't get IBIS, and you've also got a record limit. So if those things don't bother you, you may be better off getting the A6400, but having IBIS is a huge advantage, and body stabilization has saved me heaps. And if you're looking at getting full frame, a similar camera price would be the A7 III. That comes in around like $1,800 USD, but that doesn't have IBIS, and that's also got a record limit, and the autofocus isn't that great compared to the A6600. Also, the new A7 IV came out, but that's $2.5 grand USD. If you don't have the budget for that, fair enough. So in terms of size, it is a very small, compact little camera, and that's also great because you're either going to take it with you all the time. That also comes with the smaller lenses, like I mentioned before. Having APS-C only lenses is such a small, compact, and cheap little unit to buy. The LCD screen is a little small because the camera is small. It's only a 3-inch LCD screen, but the brightness is really good. Like, it really outperforms my iPhone in bright sunny weather if you turn it right up. Being a smaller camera, you do get little micro jitters when you film. So another product I'd recommend is getting a T-handle that slides into the cold shoe mount when you're filming other people. That just makes it more balanced, and you can get really, really stable shots using a T-handle. And also a camera strap. If you wrap a camera strap around your neck, you can get really smooth footage. So lens options, what really sets Sony apart from the rest of the manufacturers like Canon and Nikon. You can get some really good APS-C only lenses, which are super affordable and super cheap. Sigma do 3 great prime lenses, and that's the 24, the 30mm, and the 56mm, all at 1.4, and they're all prime lenses. For video, I really recommend getting the Sony f4 range, the 10 to 18mm f4 image stabilized sensor, just for APS-C only lenses. Yeah, so who's this camera really for? Well, I feel this camera is for majority of users. I feel like YouTubers and other people have oversold all these different full frame cameras, and majority of us don't need an overexpensive, overhyped camera. So if you're a YouTuber or you're on social media and you want to create good photo content and good video content, this is the camera for you. You can put it on auto settings, standard color profile, and you can come out with some really, really good content. I feel like it's a very fair price for $1,400 USD. I mean, it's not as cheap as like the Canon M50, but you get way more video capabilities and photo capabilities on this camera. Plus the Sony lens options is what sells it for me. Being able to buy all the different lenses from the different manufacturers, plus the Sony's f4 image stabilized range, is as good as it gets. So whether you're a first camera buyer or you're an experienced professional, this camera is going to be great for filming weddings or whatever you need it to do. So those are my thoughts on why the A6600 is a great mirrorless camera for video. It's not as good as like the A7 IV or the A7S III, but who really needs that camera? If you like this content, leave a comment on what you like the video, make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you next week.